today I'm down in the hangar and we are about to get started on the aileron portion of the wing build manual. And before I do that, because there are quite a few things I'm going to show in this video, although it's not comprehensive for the aileron system, I would like to start off on an overview of how the aileron system works on the Bearhawk companion. So here's a quick overview of how this system works. The aileron cable is a closed loop system, meaning that it is one continuous line that is connected at both ends. They're connected at point A in this diagram at the actual control stick push rod in the cockpit. Now this is footage from a future video, but it does show just how the aileron will be attached basically under my feet right in front of the seat in the cockpit. It'll then pivot around this pulley that goes outside of the cockpit and up the strut. It'll actually go inside the fairing for the strut and then go through the base of a wing in a hole that I'll cut in this video. It'll then wrap around a pulley and shoot outboard on both sides. About 2/3 of the way down the wing, it'll turn and go directly aft towards the aileron itself. This will be around another pulley that'll have a cable guard on it that we'll install in this video. At that point, both sides tie to a bell crank. The bell crank will be connected to the push rod that actually actuates my aileron. The cables will connect from turnbuckle to turnbuckle through the aft side of the wing, behind the flap torque tube and fuel tank, and through the fuselage where there'll be a turnbuckle that will allow for proper rigging and the adjustment of our flight controls. Now in this video, I won't be showing everything connected to the ailerons, but I'll be showing the cutting of these holes in this path, as well as in future videos, I will show obviously covering and building the ailerons, their connection, rigging them up, and swaging the cable ends for the final part of this system. So this is really kind of a part one. I wanted to give you the overview as we dive into this video on my aileron system in the wings. All right, so today I am back in the hangar getting ready to start working on the Bearhawk. It's Christmas. I've come down here. I've got a new tool that I'm using to record with. It's pretty sweet 3-axis gimbal. So hopefully these will be a little bit more stable of videos, maybe a little bit better quality in these, which I'm excited about. But today the plan is we're gonna get started over here looking at this Aileron pulley system. I've already come down to the hangar and moved some stuff around and got us ready. Really the first thing that I'm setting up to today is look at drilling the hole for the ailerons in the actual wing itself. That aileron will come through the strut up to the wing, and then there's a hole that I've got to cut to get through that. And so that's what we're going to get started with first, is cutting the hole back here on my Bearhawk companion. After measuring the correct distances on each side of the strut attachment point, which are not the same because this does come in at a slight angle, I connected the line between the two and verified that it was the correct length. Now the build manual will tell you this, but at the time of this recording, that length of the line needs to be 2.1 inches. I'm just using a stare ruler here to measure, mark, and verify everything is lined up correctly prior to getting a drill out and cutting holes in the wing. And it pans out. It's exactly 2.1 inches. So this line is very obvious that this thing angles up. And I think I'm actually going to get a straight edge and make sure that it looks like it's going to hit the pulley right here. This line ends up coming out of the fuselage and it's going to shoot up to this angle right here. And that looks about right. That looks like the pulley's going to be in that general area right there. And if I just put this dead on the line, yeah, that looks about right. Now it's not that I'm concerned about, but this, and it has to do this angles down towards the fuselage. It's kind of canted. The pulley is flat, which means that there'll be a side load on that pulley. There's not an AD on this on the Bearhawk's website yet. So apparently it's not that big of an issue. I think, if I'm not mistaken, pulleys can be up to 10 degrees canted, which it looks like that's inside of this. I will check that. But, you know, preferably I would like it dead straight. But this is where the cable will come into the aircraft. It will hit this pulley before shooting backwards and going up to the aileron itself. The pilot holes that I'm drilling here, I'm using a number 40 drill bit. I marked those 1/4 of an inch away from the end of my line, so that way when I upsized it to a 1/2 inch size hole, 1/4 of an inch, would be perfectly aligned. The edges I could then cut out, and I would have the perfect gap for my aileron cable to pass through into the wing itself. Later on when I'm finishing the build, I will put some chafe tape here to prevent unnecessary wear and tear on that cable. Next, I went ahead and got my Dremel tool and a cutoff wheel and just very carefully cut this aluminum skin with that cutoff tool. It actually helped to get a pair of duckbills and use that once I had one side cut, so that way I would not damage any more of the skin. I ended up missing the line pretty bad on the first cut on the lower side here, so I used the cutoff tool to try to trim and sand that up, and then I used a deburring tool as well as a piece of sandpaper to smooth that out and take all the rough edges off. I just kind of ran my hand across it until it wasn't sharp anymore, which is critical because I don't want it to overwear the cable, as well as I just don't want to hurt myself while I'm working on the rest of this airplane. All right, so that's gonna finish this one up. I'm gonna clean this up and then we will go ahead and get started on page 15. Now, this is not how we're leaving this. Once we kind of get done with the plane and we're putting everything together, there is some chafe tape that goes in here to prevent rubbing on the ailerons. That's already something I know I'm gonna check on the condition inspection on this thing, is basically the full travel of the aileron through here, making sure that I've got no wires that are chafing as they go in to this metallic structure. Hopefully this is not the case in your build if you are watching this building a Bearhawk, but there is a pretty significant typo here on page 15. The nut that is supposed to be attached to that first pulley on the screen, it reads AN 365 416A. That doesn't exist. It actually should be an AN 365 428A. That is in the kit, and I spent a little bit of time trying to find that until I realized that it was just a typo. So I want you to be aware of that going into the remainder of this build. Page 15 opens up installing the pulley just beside that hole that we just cut, and the part numbers for that are listed here on the screen. There's a note on the wing of the Bearhawk that lets you know that you need to check all of the hardware inside of those wings. I'm doing this anyways, just verifying what those individuals at the build facility have done it correctly and then setting that final torque myself. I'm doing that using a torque table out of AC 4313. Really, this is from my standards manual that I'm using. It is derived from AC 4313 though. As I'm building these pulleys up, I am going ahead, and since there's no reason to take them back off as of right now, and torquing everything along the system that I am putting together. And you'll see me do it later on, but as I completely torque everything, I'm marking that with bolt marker, so that way I know that has been torqued, it is the correct value, and I don't have to come back and verify it again. Okay, so slight alteration to the way the build manual currently shows it. Because I've got the trailing edge going this way, I push the bolt up through the bottom and Have the nut coming through the top there. I've got the rivet in place. I've not pulled it, it's just holding this to make sure everything's lined up. And I did it this way for the primary reason that I don't like to have hardware to where if the nut falls off, the pulley would fall out. So basically I'm putting the bolt top down to where if this nut for whatever reason were to come loose, which I don't expect it to. I mean, there's an inspection panel right here. I'll look at it every condition inspection. But if it were to, for whatever reason, come loose, I should be able to notice no change in the pulley. I'm not going to lose a flight control. Technically, the standard way, unless you're called for some other reason, is hardware should always, the bolts should always go top down, and they should always go front back, so that way they cannot accidentally fall out. All right, now that I've got the bolts in this section torqued, I'm gonna take and put a little Permatex bolt marker on it just to identify that, you know, I've torqued these, they're good. It's not really for me as much as it's for the DAR down the road. I don't know what the inspection is gonna end up looking like when they come to give me the airworthiness for the aircraft. So the next one is the 1/4" bolt. It goes into the MS 24566-4B. And there's also a cable guard for this as well. I'm just gonna secure a hose clamp to secure it in place. You can do this with safety wire. If you do, I would notch ever so slightly on this, so that way the wire almost indents or seats down into it, so it holds it in place, it doesn't go anywhere. Obviously this would be better than safety wire, but that is an option per the manual. So let's get this one built up and installed. All right, so on this side, instead of flipping the wings around, I went ahead and just reorganized everything. I've got my outboard pulley, so my wrenches and sockets set up. I've got my inboard pulley, torque wrench, pull rivets, Cleco tool, which I don't need anymore. Most importantly, I've got my torque specs with my standard torque table. So we're ready to rock and roll on this side and get this thing knocked out. We've got everything bolt marked here where I can see it from this inspection port. Everything's torqued, bolt marked over here again where I can visually inspect it from this inspection port here. We are ready to, now that I'm doing this, I see this, secure this Adele clamp here, or a hose clamp, excuse me, and then we will be done with this page. The next day I went down to the hangar and there was like a 40-degree drop in temperature between the 2 days. So I fired up our torpedo heater and got started finding the Bellcranks for the aileron cables. These were in my wing boxes and I unpacked them and made sure that I had all the bushings, connections, anything that was going to be associated with them ready to go for the build today. prior to doing anything else, I went ahead and reamed out all of the holes to get any paint out of the inside of them. And then I took some 320 sandpaper and just wrapped it around a 1/4-inch drive socket extension and used that to kind of ream out or sand out the paint inside of these bearing seats. These are the R4FF bearings that come in the Aileron kit, wing kit. And I got that to where those fit in correctly. There was a bushing that you don't really see here in between these two. So that all is organized correctly. Then I went and found all of the hardware per the build manual. All of this information seems to be correct. And then I started installing the bell crank onto the wing itself. Make sure that you get the orientation of this bell crank correct. The best way I know to describe it is that the cross pieces of both what you're mounting to and the bell crank should be perpendicular to one another. They should kind of make a X like you see right here. That's letting you know that you have oriented this thing correctly, at least in my case for my build. I then torqued the bell crank down and made sure it still moved freely, even though I had torqued it down to the 50 to 70 inch-pounds per the manual in this case. All right, so at this point, we've got everything where the cable comes in up the strut, comes in through the hole that we cut, goes around this first bearing over the top of it, goes under this next bearing down here, and shoots up and will tie into this bell crank right here before shooting out and actually going to the ailerons itself. So we've got all of that completed. Now we're gonna move on to drilling the holes in the aft into the spar. And to do that, I've actually had a buddy 3D print the templates that are in the resource section of the Bearhawk website. He has a 3D printer, I do not, so he printed those for me. I'll end up going and picking those up at school. I've got to help a coworker who's building a RV Time Mag on his engine. And then once I get those picked up, we'll get back in here and we'll start drilling these holes. But I'm trying to do all of the aileron in the wing in one video, so that way if there's somebody working on this, they get the entire project or the entire process done, not just a couple of pages that deal with it. So let's go grab that. For you guys, it'll be, you know, the next frame, but for me, it's gonna be the next few days as I go get this, come back, and we get started back in here. Okay, I'm back in here this afternoon now. I ran down to Murfreesboro and got these templates that, I guess these are really jigs that I printed off from the Bearhawk website. And what's cool is my friend who had the 3D printer, he ended up printing my handle, the Flying Mechanic, on most of these. He also flies drones, so he printed that on one of them. So we're gonna talk about how these work. I've already kind of laid out this one wing right here. There's some other, you know, template things to print. This, I think, is one of the flap component, like the drill jig, for making sure you get that perfectly square. Some really cool stuff that Virgil and his team have put together. But let's get into cutting the aileron holes here, and that starts with these actual templates right here, marking those holes. Based off what I've read on the forum, one of the most complicated and challenging things for a builder is lining up the holes that the cable passes through on the back side of the wing. These jigs minimize the frustration with that by allowing you to duplicate the exact same location from the trailing piece of skin to the ribs themselves. So it's awesome that Bearhawk provides this to its builders now. And the challenge isn't just cutting a straight line, but about halfway through it bends to go to the bell crank we just installed. Where this is running dead straight behind this flap mechanism right here, this rib's gonna start bending it to where it lines up with the bell crank here on this side of the pulley. Or I guess it's not even a pulley, it's just a bolt going through there. So I need to get this cable to where it can line up to shoot from here down and then shoot out behind the flap mechanism. So every single one of these will be a different template, and just make sure you number them correctly, slash, you know, just know that 2 goes with 7 and so on. I believe it's the first 6 ribs are the first template, and then the last 4 or 5 are each of these templates that you can see me grabbing here as they progressively get further and further away from the upper surface and more in line with that bell crank. I pilot drilled these holes with a number 40 drill bit prior to opening them up with a step bit, just to make sure that my alignment looked good. I ran a string down through there and finally bit the bullet and opened these up to their final size with my step bit. The snap bushings that go in these holes were not in my materials list, so I ordered a bag of these from Aircraft Spruce, and once they got here, just pop them into place. It's very simple, and this is just preventing the cable from rubbing against the metal. Now on rib number 6, right in the middle, you will be installing a actual fair lead bushing. So you'll need to upsize that hole a little bit larger. I believe it's to 1 inch. Just verify that with your wings manual. In this hole, you will be installing a fair lead mount. So I'm drilling the holes out to actually install that into the aircraft's wing right now. And then you will install the fair lead with a snap ring on the back side of it. I've seen some pretty interesting articles by folks on the forum who may have used something different than a snap bushing. Some people are suggesting using safety wire rather than a snap bushing. Some people are suggesting using some other methods or alternative means of securing those. The snap ring came with my kit, so that's what I'm planning on using on the back side of these fair lead, and future me will just have to deal with that when we go to replace these. So while this is not comprehensive, there are other things to be done on the aileron system, like creating the cables that are going to connect between the bell crank and the control stick, and obviously the carry-through cable. I am really pleased with what we've gotten done in this video on this portion of my build. In the next video, we'll actually take a look at these flaps. This is the torque tube for the flap rod behind me. We'll be installing some springs, drilling some connections, and getting that rigged up to be installed on the aircraft later. We're covering a lot of ground in this build manual, now approaching the halfway mark or even past it, since I'm not running some of the things like the aux tank, which are also in the build manual. So I'm super excited about where we're at on the Bearhawk and look forward to sharing the flaps, hopefully in a couple weeks here once I get that video out. Thanks for watching and have a great rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one.